My parents hated my boyfriend so much. My dad actually offered him $10,000 to disappear from my life. $10,000. All because they thought he wasn't from our circle. It was a level of control and betrayal I never saw coming, and it ripped my world apart. I've been dating James for almost a year now, and honestly, it's been the most amazing relationship of my life. We met in the most unexpected way during that huge storm last April. My Uber canceled. I was stuck downtown in a torrential downpour without an umbrella because, seriously, who checks the weather anymore? I ducked into this tiny bookstore to wait it out, try not to drip everywhere, when this cute guy working there started chatting with me about the book I was looking at. We ended up talking for like an hour, somehow getting onto our favorite childhood cartoons. He's a Batman, the animated series guy, which is, by the way, absolutely correct. When the rain finally let up, he literally offered me his umbrella to take because he only lived 2 blocks away. I tried to refuse, but he insisted, saying I could just return it sometime. So, obviously, I had to come back to return it, right? We exchanged numbers, started texting, and it just felt so easy, so natural. He asked me out for coffee that weekend, and the rest, as they say, is history. James is the sweetest person I've ever met. He's smart, funny, hardworking, and treats me with so much respect. He's not for money, not at all. He grew up with a single mom in a pretty rough neighborhood and put himself through community college while working full-time. I admire his work ethic so much. This man never complains, even when things are tough. Here's where my problem starts. My parents, well, they're not exactly snobs, but they definitely have expectations about who I should date. We're not super rich or anything, but my dad is successful, and my mom comes from an old family, whatever that even means in America, right? They paid for my private school and my college tuition at an expensive art school, which I'm grateful for. But they act like this means they get to approve every decision I make. When I first mentioned James, they seemed skeptical. My mom immediately asked where he went to school and what his parents did. When I told her community college and that his mom was a nurse's aide, I saw this look on her face. A flicker of judgment. The first dinner with my parents was a complete disaster. My mom accidentally spilled red wine on James's shirt within 10 minutes of him arriving. He was so gracious about it, laughing it off. But then she did it again at the next dinner 2 weeks later. How do you accidentally spill wine on the same person twice? Both times she barely apologized, just handed him a napkin and said something about how some stains never come out. I was mortified. After that, things got progressively worse. My mom started sending me links to dating apps and articles about how relationships formed in your early 20s rarely last. Then, last week, I borrowed her iPad. And guess what? I found dating profiles for me on 3 different apps, with recent photos she'd taken from my Instagram and these super cringe bios that made me sound like I was looking for a husband with a trust fund or something. I was livid. I slammed my hand on the counter and told her it was completely inappropriate and invasive. She tried to defend it, saying she was just keeping my options open. She even had the nerve to say James seemed nice enough, but not quite right for the long term. I walked out and slammed the door, so hard a picture fell off the wall. Good. Maybe that would wake her up to how serious I was. Then it's Sunday dinner. Yes, my family still does 4 Sunday dinners. My dad started making comments about how James's bookstore probably isn't financially viable in the digital age. He asked if James had considered a more stable career path. Mom chimed in, asking if I was really sure about settling down so young. Reminding me my cousin Teresa just got engaged to a guy whose family owns half the real estate in their town. James has been incredibly patient through all of this, like saint-level patience. He keeps saying he understands they're just protective of me, but I could see it starting to wear on him. Last week, after dinner, he was so quiet. When I asked what was wrong, he just sighed and said, "I don't think your parents will ever see me as good enough for you." It broke my heart because he is good enough. He's better than good enough. The final straw came last night. I was at my parents' house, helping my dad set up his new MacBook because, apparently, being under 30 automatically makes me tech support. I went to the kitchen to get some water and overheard my parents talking. My dad literally said, "That boy is just using her. He probably sees her as his meal ticket." My mom agreed. They needed to intervene. I was so shocked, I dropped the glass I was holding, and it shattered on the floor. They both came running in and saw me standing there, tears streaming down my face. Instead of apologizing, my dad doubled down. He said they were just concerned about my future stability, that I deserved someone from our circle. I lost it. Completely. I told them James has never once asked me for money. He's annoyingly independent, insisting on paying his fair share, even though I make more than him right now with my freelance work. He's supportive of my goals, genuinely interested in what I do. He remembers little details about things I like and surprises me with thoughtful gifts that never cost much, but always mean a lot. I told them they were being elitist and judgmental, and if they couldn't respect my choices, they could stay out of my personal life. My mom had the audacity to say, "We're just trying to protect you from making a mistake." I told her the only mistake would be letting them bully me into ending the best relationship I've ever had. My dad got red in the face and told me I was being dramatic and ungrateful after all they'd done for me. I grabbed my stuff and left, ignoring my mom calling after me. I texted them later that I needed space, but they've been blowing up my phone with paragraphs about how I'm throwing away my future and being manipulated. I'm seriously considering moving in with James. I'm worried about what they might do. They're still helping with my student loans, and I'm on their family phone plan and health insurance. I don't want to be financially dependent on them. But let's be real, my freelance income isn't enough to cover everything yet. Has anyone dealt with parents like this? James says I should try to talk to them calmly, but honestly, I'm afraid I'll just end up screaming or crying or both. Part of me wants to just block them on everything and go no contact, but they're still my parents, and as toxic as they're being, I know they think they're looking out for me in their extremely misguided way. But I'm not going to let them drive away the best thing that's ever happened to me just because he doesn't fit their narrow definition of success. James is kind, honest, hardworking, and treats me like I'm the most important person in his world. That's worth more than any fancy degree or family connections. By the way, if you're still with me on this wild ride, make sure to hit that subscribe button. More unbelievable stories are coming. You won't want to miss what happens next. Okay, so first of all, thank you to everyone who commented on my last post. I read literally every single comment and was honestly shocked at how supportive everyone was. I showed some of them to James, and he got all quiet. He said it was nice to know people were on our side, which made me realize something was definitely up with him. The night after I posted, we were at his place watching YouTube. During a break, I just flat out asked him if something was bothering him besides my parents' obvious rudeness, y'all. He got this really uncomfortable look on his face and said, "There's something I need to tell you, but I didn't know how." Turns out, last week, my dad called James and asked him to meet for coffee. James thought maybe my dad was finally trying to make an effort to get to know him, so he said yes. But when they met at Starbucks, my dad spent about 5 minutes on small talk before getting to the real point. My father offered James $10,000 to break up with me and disappear from my life. An actual check. He pulled it out of his jacket pocket and slid it across the table like some kind of movie villain. James said he just stared at it in complete shock before pushing it back and telling my dad he wasn't interested. My dad apparently got all red in the face and said he could make it $15,000 if that's what it took. I literally couldn't believe what I was hearing. I knew my parents were being awful, but this was next-level psycho behavior. James told my dad that he loved me and wasn't going anywhere. And my dad basically threatened him, saying something about how men like you always leave eventually when something better comes along anyway. James walked out at that point, but he'd been wrestling with whether to tell me for days. He was afraid it would completely ruin my relationship with my parents, but also didn't want to keep secrets from me. He looked so stressed telling me this, like he thought I might not believe him or something. I was shaking, full-on trembling with rage. I immediately called my dad, even though it was like 11 at night. When he answered, all groggy, I just went off. I asked him if he thought my relationship was just some transaction he could pay his way out of. He tried to act confused at first, but when I mentioned the specific amount and the Starbucks, he knew he was caught. And then he tried to defend it. Said he was investing in my future and that he knew how these things go, that James would take the money eventually. I was screaming so loud that my neighbor knocked on the wall. James had to physically take the phone from me because I was about to throw it. I couldn't sleep all night. James kept trying to calm me down, but I was just so hurt and angry. The next morning, I texted my mom asking if she knew about this. She sent back this long paragraph about how they were just concerned and how these early relationships rarely last. And wouldn't it be better to find out now rather than later if he's really in it for the right reasons? The right reasons? Like what? Like the family bank account? I texted back that the only person treating me like an ATM was them, trying to control me through money. So I decided we needed to have this out in person. I drove to their house that evening. James offered to come, but I thought that would just make things more explosive. When I got there, they were both acting all concerned, like I was having some kind of breakdown. My mom tried to hug me, and I literally stepped back and told her not to touch me. We sat down in the living room, and I just laid it all out. I told them I knew about the bribe, and that I'd never been so disappointed in them in my entire life. My dad had the nerve to say it was just a test to see if James was the real deal. Like what? That's not a test. That's emotional manipulation. My mom started crying, her go-to move whenever she's losing an argument, and saying they just wanted what was best for me. I asked them straight up, what exactly about James isn't best for me? Is it that he's kind, supportive, hardworking, honest? Dad actually said, and I quote, "He's not from our circle, Megan. You deserve someone with a background and connections that can help your future, not hinder it." I literally laughed in his face. I told him James has never hindered me, only supported every single thing I want to do. I asked if by our circle, he meant people with money, because that seemed to be their only actual objection. That's when my mom got all huffy and said I was being deliberately obtuse and that life isn't a fairy tale and love doesn't pay the bills. I pointed out that I've been making my own money for 2 years now with my freelancing, and she had the audacity to say, "Yes, darling, but who paid for the education that allows you to do that?" And there it was, the financial hammer. I knew it was coming, but it still hit hard. My dad leaned forward with this super patronizing look and said they'd thought about it carefully and decided to give me an ultimatum. Either I'd come to my senses and break up with James, or they would stop paying my tuition for my final semester and cut me off financially. I stood up so fast, I knocked over a glass of water on their coffee table. I told them they couldn't buy me any more than they could buy James. My dad stood up too, and we were literally yelling at each other across the living room. He kept saying I was making an emotional decision I'd regret. And I told him the only thing I regretted was thinking they actually cared about my happiness instead of their image. My mom tried to play peacemaker, saying we should all calm down, but I was way past calming down. I asked them point blank, if I stay with James, you'll really cut me off completely? My dad looked me straight in the eye and said yes, they would. Said I needed to learn there are consequences to poor decisions. So I grabbed my bag and told them that was all I needed to know. I was almost at the door when my mom caught up to me, crying and asking where I was going. I told her I was going home to my boyfriend, who actually respects me as a person and not a puppet they can control. She grabbed my arm and tried to stop me from leaving, and I yanked away so hard that I stumbled into the wall and knocked down this ugly vase. I didn't even say sorry. I just walked out and slammed the door behind me. I cried most of the drive back to my apartment, wiping my face at stoplights, trying to keep it together. When I got home, I just sat in my car for like 20 minutes, pulling myself together. James was waiting up for me. It was past midnight at this point, and one look at my face told him everything he needed to know. He just held me while I cried some more, not saying anything, just being there. When I finally calmed down enough to talk, I told him everything. He got really quiet and asked if I was sure I wanted to give up my tuition money for him. He said he would understand if I needed to take a step back from our relationship to finish school, that maybe we could reconnect after I graduated. And that just made me cry more, because even when my parents were literally trying to bribe him out of my life, he was still putting my needs first. I told him absolutely not, that I wasn't letting my parents dictate my life choices through financial manipulation. He asked if I was sure like 10 times. I finally had to grab his face and tell him, "Yes, I'm sure. Stop asking me that." I had enough in savings to cover about half of my final semester's tuition if I stretched it super thin. James offered to loan me the rest, but I didn't want to start our future with that kind of debt to each other. I'm applying for emergency financial aid and looking into last-minute scholarship options. I might have to take a semester off and work full-time to save up, which sucks because I was so close to finishing, but I'd rather delay my degree than let my parents control my life. A couple of my freelance clients have said they might be able to give me more hours, so that's something at least. My parents have been blowing up my phone with texts alternating between guilt trips from my mom and stern lectures about the real world from my dad. I finally just muted their conversations because I can't deal with it right now. My younger sister, Rose, texted me asking what happened because mom was crying all day. When I told her the short version, she was horrified. She's always been the good daughter who does what they want, but even she thinks this is too far. I moved most of my important stuff to James's apartment since my lease is up in 3 weeks anyway. We were planning to move in together next month, but we're accelerating the timeline now. His place is tiny, and we're going to be on top of each other constantly, but it's worth it to be free from their control. James has been absolutely amazing through all of this. He keeps reminding me that we'll figure it out together, and I believe him. When we were packing up some of my stuff yesterday, he found this stupid photo booth strip from our third date and stuck it on his fridge with this dorky smile on his face. That's when I knew for sure I made the right choice. So, that's where we are. Broke, stressed, but together. I'm applying for a loan today and looking for a cheaper phone plan since they'll probably kick me off the family plan soon, too. Any advice on affordable health insurance options would be super appreciated because that's my next concern. Also, can we talk about how insane it is to offer someone money to break up with your daughter? Like, did they think that would work? And if it had worked, did they think I'd never find out? I keep replaying in my head and getting angry all over again. It's been a while since my last post, and I've been avoiding this update because I wasn't sure how to put it all together. People have been asking what's up, so here it goes. Life's still a mixed bag. Some wins, some headaches, and a lot that's just unfolding. And I'm not totally sure where it's headed. Graduation was a big deal. I went back and forth about inviting my parents and finally sent them an invite. Not because I was over their crap, but because I didn't want to regret not giving them a chance to see me pull this off without their help. That morning, I was a nervous wreck. Couldn't even get my cap on straight because my hands were shaking. James tried to fix it, but he has zero clue about hair stuff. His mom, Sharon, showed up early, all smiles and proud, which helped a little. They came. I saw them lurking in the back row during the ceremony. Mom in some fancy dress, Dad in his usual suit, like he was closing a deal. They didn't cheer or anything, just stood there watching. Afterward, I was snapping pics with James and Sharon when they walked over. Mom went for a hug, but I stepped back. Didn't mean it, just reflex. Dad gave James a stiff handshake. They said, "Congrats," but it felt like they were just checking a box. Sharon suggested lunch, and they dodged it with some excuse about plans. I figured as much. They weren't there for me, just to keep up appearances. A week later, Mom texted about a celebration dinner at their upscale place. I brushed it off but agreed to coffee instead, curious what they'd say. Bad mood. They started with chit-chat about their lives, then grilled me on my future. I mentioned the full-time agency job, and Dad's face just fell like I'd said I was begging on the street. Then Mom handed me an envelope. A $5,000 check, a graduation gift. I knew what was up. They said they'd reconsidered and would support me if I'd be sensible, meaning ditch James. I slid it back and said I was good without it. Dad got heated, said I was putting some guy over family. I told him it wasn't about James. It was about them trying to run my life. I left them sitting there stunned. They've been blowing up my phone since. Mom with her worried act. Dad with his. We're concerned lectures. I'm mostly tuned out, focusing on what's next. James's bookstore gig has been a ride. He bought it from the owner, and yeah, it's tough. The place has issues. Old wiring gave out a while back, and stock's been tricky, but he's making it work. My agency pay bumped up, and with his hustle, we're not drowning anymore. Rent was getting insane, so we took a shot and got a mortgage on this little house. It's rough around the edges. Leaky spots, creaky floors, a weird ceiling stain, but it's ours. We're fixing it up bit by bit, and it's starting to feel like home. Even if I'm always scrubbing paint off my hands and James is grumbling at DIY videos. We got some wins, though. Last week, I was fed up with my parents' noise, so I called them on WhatsApp video. No heads up. They answered, looking thrown off, and I just went for it. I flipped the camera, showed them my Dean's List certificate pinned up, waved the mortgage papers with both our names, then walked outside to show James by the store with the owner's sign. Back inside, I gave him a quick tour. I said, "You called James a nobody and offered him $10,000 to disappear because I deserve better. This is what that nobody helped me pull off in a year. No help from you, no strings." Dad's face went tight, and he started in. Said I was showing off and being petty. I told him it wasn't about that, just facts. They were wrong about us. He shot back that the house looks basic and we're probably stretched thin. I said we're doing it our way, not theirs, and that's what counts. Mom jumped in, softer, saying she missed me. She apologized for the dating profiles, but then added she still thinks James and I are moving fast. I told her I'd do family stuff if they could keep it chill, but I'm done letting them judge James. Dad tried to argue, so I ended the call. Didn't need to hear more. They've backed off a bit since, but I'm not holding my breath. James and I are solid. Some days the house feels like a real win. Others we're tired and short with each other, but we're figuring it out. The store's a grind. Money's tightish, and my parents are still out there, stuck in their ways. I don't know if they'll ever really get it, or if I'll ever stop feeling weird about them. What are your thoughts on setting boundaries with family, especially when money is involved? Have you ever had to choose between your family's expectations and your own happiness? Tell me what you think. I really want to know.